Hello, gang. Welcome to Friday Forward Focus. It is September 20th. I'm going to start off here today with a question. So, for those who are using NinjaTrader or any other platform that has Fibonacci extensions, the question is, how do I use those to add measured moves to my charts? So, I'm going to pull up an example here. This is Russell. This is one of the things we've been trading here this morning. So with the Fibonacci extension, when you're looking for measured moves, what we're looking at are basically measured impulse moves. And an impulse move is this primary directional move. Now, we also have to keep in mind wave count. So this looks like a nice solid trend here, and you see a number of different moves to the downside. What I'm counting as my waves are going to be 1 and 2. This is going to be the 2-wave correction, and then I've got the 2-wave continuation, and then just a little bit of an extension of that. So when I'm adding my Fibonacci extension to this, I'm going up to this little toolbar here where it looks like a pencil or a crayon. I'm going to go down to Fibonacci extension. Then I'm going to take this high and then go to the low of that first 2-wave move. And then I'm going to go to that last high. So this gives me my extension here where I am looking at this as my move, and it shows me where that support level is. So you can see a little bit of reaction here at this is the 68.2, 76.4, and here's the 100% extension. And you'll notice that these levels continue to hold as support and resistance as it progresses. So not only is it going to serve as, good support for the time being to show you your absolute low, but it's also going to help out with projection points further on as well. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky one because you have to have paid attention to our wave count class to understand this one a little bit better. Let me show you another example here on a gold trade I had earlier here today. Hold on one second. Well, this was a pivot play. So let's scroll up here. So here's gold, and this is a little bit more straightforward. So we've got our low to our high, our 2-wave correction, and then the extension, and there's the 100%. And look how it literally held it to the tick. So this is pretty common behavior. You'll see these hold extremely well time and time again. And we even have that measured move back on the downside here with the 2-wave move. It's trying to do a little bit of that third kind of push here. That should exhaust it here for a little bit. But you can see the nice 2-wave move back into that 38.2%. And again, these will continue to hold as support and resistance as it goes forward. So that's one of the main tools. I will show you it on TradeStation as well. Yes. So you can have your toolbar open, or you can go to Fibonacci Tools and choose your price extension lines. So I don't have a good one on here. I should have pulled up something first. Well, we'll go to look at this one here. So we've got the first move up, and then we've got our extension here. So we have main move. Again, this is a 2-wave correction here. 2 waves up, another 2-wave correction. So you can see that 100% extension here on MWA as well. So that is how you add it on TradeStation. All right, gang, let's go flip on over here and going to show you what is going on in the markets today. Let me turn my fan on first, though. It is getting toasty in here. Hold on 1 second. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, so I'm going to pull up to the larger time frame here. So here's what we had things looking at like on just this is just a 6,000 tick chart here. And you'll notice we have essentially a head and shoulders type of pattern going on. And this is what impacted the action here just a few minutes ago. So this had the two-way pull back up. We have, pretty comparable time development between those highs. We had a nice week, well, 2 weeks where we discussed different head and shoulders patterns here. So this is your retest entry. And then this morning, we had this nice two-way correction and it started to break down. And I posted in our League of Traders. Up here. So we were looking for an avalanche on the ES and it tried to break a little bit early. It ended up breaking later. But what we were looking at was here was support in the overall market. You can see just the short-term measured move zone. But this was part of that bigger two-way correction and that shoulder on that larger head and shoulders was forming on this side as well. So even though we had support here, I put a notice. I'm like, you know what? Support here short term, but iffy larger time frames, concern due to shallow avalanche type potential. So last week we were looking at the shallow avalanches. And what we get with a shallow avalanche is you get the really strong momentum on the upside. Then you get a little bit of a slower move on the correction. And actually, usually you have a lot slower move than this, and it's usually going to be a two-way. So this is kind of, a hybrid between an avalanche and a shallow avalanche. A shallow one would have an even slower move for the correction. It'd be more like this. So then the two-wave move here, getting off to a slow start, that's normal in a shallow avalanche. So even though we were hitting that support, previous lows, kind of doing the measured move thing over here. The larger potential was that this could still break down further and it could pick up momentum. So we often see things start slowly and gain momentum when that support gives way. We kind of saw that gaining momentum over here. The opposite happens usually when something starts out quickly, it can shift momentum and slow. So when something starts out quickly, it can slow down and turn around. So let me show you guys the extension on this. We'll look at exactly where it has gone to. Right smack into the 100%. So with a true shallow avalanche, this would go a lot farther. It would go down into here. So you would see a correction and then you'll see the continuation. That potential is still here because of what's going on the larger time frames. So even though we've got the support at that 100% extension right now, kind of basically in line with your typical normal avalanche, the larger time frame with that head and shoulders still has that potential that this can go and develop into that continuation. So I am not going to rule that out as we go into the latter half of the day here. I'll go back to the larger time frame again for you. So here's what's going on the daily chart. The daily chart's kind of iffy. The daily chart could really go either way. So here's the shoulder, head, shoulder. But on the bigger scale, this is more of a typical zone for a reversal or a correction. So we're only like halfway back to that level. So this could pull back down to like this and then even come back up into here before we get a bigger correction. You will see that happen quite frequently. So that's what I'm still watching for on a bigger time frame. So I'm just kind of looking at this as short-term correction. We've got support back in here. And so heading into next week, you know, could just be a really short-term correction. We just got to watch that momentum to see how it holds. And if it can do something where it shifts into that support to come back up, or if it goes really strong into it. So it's an iffy zone because it can go either way, but I'm leaning towards it trying to pull up here. I know we talked about this a bit last week as well. Let's go look at the Russell again. So the Russell was a big player this morning. Had a nice, actually it was like textbook inverse head and shoulders here. So you have just a bit above a measured move here, and it's also part of the bigger two-wave move to the upside. Now we've got our two waves down. It's kind of coming back up. It's like in a zone where it could basically do anything at this point intraday. It's really choppy. So here's the 3,000 tick chart. So you can see this can kind of chop around. The momentum was really strong on the downside here. You can see another example of that measured move using those impulse waves. Here is what it would look like on the upside, here to here on the upside. So that's what your upside move looks like. On the downside, it would go to here, here, and here. So when you get something kind of tilted in the middle, use the first high and the last low. That's going to be your best bet for accurately giving you your Fibonacci extensions. Also, maybe a tweet. Yes, Richie, definitely a tweet would do it too. As far as market drop or rally, you never know over the weekend. So here, we're basically coming up. It's kind of trying to do that second wave. It's, again, messy in here. This basically is kind of a creeper market here. So with the stronger drop, you'll usually get the slower moves up. And that's what we're seeing happening right now. They can go and gain momentum. So what they would have to usually do is like form something like a shallow phoenix, and then they would gain momentum. I don't think that's going to be the case here today, because if we look at the larger daily chart, we've got a lot of resistance here. So I do think this is still going to try to hold this zone as we go into next week here. Again, strong momentum on the upside. So see, when this had strong momentum on the downside, it took that shift to get that momentum coming up again. Same thing here, pretty decent momentum on the upside, took a shift to bring it back down. This was pretty average momentum on the downside, so it was able to be okay on the way back up. But usually with this more rapid move, you not only run the risk that it's just going to be a choppier correction, but it can even do like the slightly higher high moves too. And we've got the bigger base here at the highs. Let me show you the weekly on this. So the bigger base on the highs has it with that potential that this can turn into a larger phoenix and come back up into this zone here. So that's what we've got going on the bigger time frame on the Russell. So basically short side of things on the Russell, keeping things pretty close to the vest. Long side 2 here until we get like a little bit more of a kneecap. Kneecap is just like this little pause in the middle of these legs to get that strength building again. change some of these markets here. Show you guys wheat, and I'll pull up bonds too. NASDAQ so far is holding that 100% pretty darn perfectly at the moment. We'll flip over here to Forex here in just a second. So here's what we got going on in bonds. This is our daily chart here. So check out the momentum on that. Again, the rounded high. So it starts off really strong, shifts the momentum, and that allows for this to drop faster. So this is kind of in the creeper mode. So it can really go back and forth in here, and it's all going to depend upon those smaller waves on like a 240-minute chart to determine how this is going to play out. If this tries to go for an avalanche, what we would usually see, because this is such a strong drop here, is that it would go more like this and then have a shallower move like that. This is going to be our support level. So it's going to be a lot trickier here. On the daily charts, you're going to get the shorter impulse moves versus the bigger impulse moves. They're going to be more like the ones up here. Monthly chart, we're nearing pretty close to some of these larger impulse moves as far as the size on this. Now there is the potential that this can treat this like this is our main move up. Here's our first correction, here's our second correction, and there's the larger move. That potential is here because of the way this reacted off of that kind of really steep 2T. So it had the drop down, but instead of coming back down into S3, it shifted momentum and stayed in S2. So for those of you wondering, what on earth is she talking about? So here's our typical 2T pattern. It's a reversal pattern. S1 is the channel support. S2 is this first congestion. S3 is down here. Just down, the S just stands for support. So this is the one you're usually looking for as your first target. This is your second target. So you can see it hit S2 very quickly. Couldn't make it into S3. It shifted. And this wasn't a pure 2T because we had the higher high here. So typical 2T would go like that, and it would have this higher high here. And then you would get that reversal there. So that is what we've got going on here. Larger time frames. On wheat, good support here. You can see that two-wave move down on the weekly. Let me show you the daily. Actually, you can see it on the 240 too. It's one of those messy ones. So you got your first main move down, then you've got this tilted congestion here, and then you've got the break. So this is actually your two waves on the downside. It's kind of tricky to see that, but that's what we're looking at here. So you got first correction, second correction in here. So weekly on this, looks like it's going to go into a trading range here for a bit. So the zone of the previous highs is going to be resistance. And we just have to watch how this momentum plays out on here. So there's your resistance zone. So because this is a V, inverse V, and this is a V over here, this starts to have a better shot of shifting momentum and playing out like that. So even though it's off to kind of a pretty rapid start here, that could change as this goes forward. So we've really got to pay attention to how this momentum plays out. It's going to be a little bit trickier for this to try to break higher because it pulled back more than 50% and this was a strong momentum move. If this had been more gradual like this, then it could pull back more than 50% and still break higher because it would do the shallow phoenix. So it would look like this. It would have the drop, kind of a slower start, pull back even more gradually, and then gain momentum. We don't have that going on here. So we don't want this pulling back this far in order to get really strong buying going on. At this point, it would have to do this, but that's going to even have a better chance of failing because of that pullback there. So it could still go do that, pull down to another low so that you get 3 lows again before it tries to bounce again. Gold is holding that third low like we were looking for, kind of the shifted momentum. I'll show you an updated chart on that here quick. So this is typical for our trend development that we get those first 2 wave measured moves, and then it can go for third one that shifts momentum. That kind of helps things bounce a little better. Russell is hitting pretty close to a measured move here. Again, this one was a messier start. I guess I closed my Russell chart. By the way, we are on December contracts now. Kind of see it here. So this one is tricky when you're looking at extensions because you don't see a full second pullback. This is just really too brief. You basically have a baby 2T here and it pulls back into S1. So when something is trickier like that, what I'll do is I will use the low to the high to the low and use that to help me identify the extension levels. That tends to work a little bit better. All right, let's go take a look at some of our Forex pairs here. So our Eurodollar, we've been looking at this as trying to have that secondary breakdown where it has that tilted shift here in the middle because it couldn't react enough off of this previous low. Even though it shifted into this support here, had strong momentum on the upside, it also had really rapid move back down into it. And this is the do or die point. If it was going to go up, pull up, it should have done so there. So right now, what we're looking at is this to go for that second measured move down in here. Kind of bring in some more selling. If we look at this on the daily charts over here, you can see that bias is still holding pretty well. So, oops, sorry about that. We got basically slower momentum here on the upside. So here's where it kind of like tried to bounce. I did these as just like little short swing trades. Then it gave the 2-wave swing back again, and that essentially shifted this momentum still. So we're still dealing with overall momentum favoring downside coming out of this. You can see it started to try to shift to bring it up, but it just couldn't offer any confirmation on that. Dollar yen. Here's our weekly. Weekly on this again is another iffy one, or sorry, this is monthly rather, but it's another iffy one because we've got this symmetrical triangle. And the thing with symmetrical triangles is a lot of times they try to break one way and then flip and break the other way. So we're kind of seeing that two wave move on the downside. This is coming into a potential flip zone. Let's look at this on the daily. Yep, you can see a little bit of that trying in here. And here, see how this had that sharp drop? Remember what I was talking about earlier in the overall market when you've got the really sharp drop? Overall, more gradual upside, and then that can tend to lead to that slower continuation. That's what you've got going on here. So resistance here, but this could still continue to try to pull back up. I wouldn't do anything with this going into next week. If you look at this impulse wave here, you're right at typical impulse wave size. So this could easily congest, give a little bit more reaction off of this level. It's going to be hard for it to get a continuation right away. So intraday, you might even get some short setups on this right now. Let's look at that 30-minute. Well, that was a pretty, see here, same thing. Really steep drop, right? And then it tries to do the continuation and it's a two wave and it's shallower. This can still try to do that again, kind of a bigger scale because it has the rounded high. So I would still be more focused on the downside on this as we go into next week. Pound. Here's that momentum again on the pound. Nice 2T, right into about a measured move. Can even just eyeball it. I'll show you guys the actual Fibonacci extension though. So see how perfectly that holds? Very, very nicely. We only have tails on the upside of that 100%. A lot of times if it goes into that 76.4, then you're going to get up to that 100%. If it hits that 76.4 really rapidly, you'll make it up to that next level. The monthly, there's that shift. See, same thing. And just kind of trying to do it again. It didn't quite hit a measured move here. We're a little bit shy of a measured move. If it went to a more of a measured move, we would have even a 2B, could bounce here. So I would like another little flush to the downside to get a bounce on that monthly time frame. Here's the daily. So we've got the little bounce with just that smaller measured move, but a little bit of a flush would help turn it around even faster. So here's your two wave. So it's kind of slower on the upside so far. Something that could bring it down like even like that. That can turn it around so that you can get some stronger buying trying to come in again. This again, pretty similar impulse move as compared to a lot of the other ones. So you're at a decent level of resistance in here for this to start to try to chop around more. Look intraday. Again. So you got a bit of a 2T there going on too. So with your high and then your two wave high. So that can help turn this around. Again, a slower move there. Fly got into my office and he's driving me nuts. Maybe he's just really wanting to learn how to trade or something. Keeps flying in front of my screen. All right, the Swiss franc, I have been pretty darn indifferent on this lately. it's gone past, any levels that I would look for triggers right now. So it just comes down to what's going on the smaller time frames at this point. Kind of getting a little bit of a potential for that to break down. This, when it breaks, is going to break fast. So when this finally does get going, it should go pretty darn quickly. So we got a little bit of that trying to have a potential for an avalanche. So we could watch that into next week, but I would start with it just playing things out on the daily time frame. Don't generally like to see that lower low in the middle, especially going into the higher high, but that's what we've got so far. You can see that tilted upside here, coming out of that head and shoulders. Just did the 2T over here. So here's your shoulder, here's your head, here's your shoulder, here's your retest high, and then here's your 2T short. So that's what we're looking at on the bigger time frame here. Looney also kind of indifferent. It looks like we can get that extra pull down here. Shoulder, head, gone really too far for a decent shoulder. So still looking at this to try to play out this handle longer on this cup with handle here. But I would like it to come out further before it offers a continuation. That would be kind of the closest I would want to see. But it could even go a little bit further than that. So some downside potential here still with this on the monthly. Daily here is just kind of iffy. That can go into that to form that downside. It could even do like a 2T here, little baby 2T to get going. Ooh, this fly, man. All right. Aussie's kind of creeping. So you got the two waves down and it's trying to do that third, just kind of like what we saw on gold. So we're looking for like that and then a bounce. So supporting here. Basically exactly like what happened just now on gold. So this is actually pulled up even further now. So same idea. All right. Apple is coming up into retest of that previous high. So we talked about over the last couple of months, this has that potential to do that 2T because it pulled up to this high here. It hasn't done a great two-wave correction to get there. So right now it's dealing with that previous high. We have a little baby 2T here. See if you can see it. So here's a high, pullback, comes up. Here's your 2T, just trying to pull back in here. So this has corrective mode as we go into next week, but the larger time frame still has that potential to do that. It doesn't have to, but that potential is there. So just want to be aware of that as it comes into this previous high. Even though that previous high is a good, price resistance level, because of the way this pulled up so far to start with before it paused, it has that potential to go to that slightly higher high. If it hadn't pulled up as fast right there, then it would not be as likely to do that. So this kind of just pulling up a third and then coming back up into here, that's what leaves that open potential. If this had gone like this, then it would be more likely to do a full pivot at that point. So basically falling shy of that is the main thing going on here. Roku, of course, everybody's following Roku, and where are we at on Roku? Right at this previous high support that we were looking at over the last couple weeks as our main support level. So here's that 2-wave move down, gained momentum, 3 waves up, exhausted the trend. So you're at support here on the intraday chart. We've got the 2-wave move down. And this should widen up. So this can still push into that support level further, but you're right at some support as we head into the weekend here on that 30-minute. So I would expect that, over the next week or so, you're going to get down into that 100 level. NASDAQ is sold off again pretty well here. It's basically continuing with that larger bias we were talking about earlier when we just joined our session. Show you that quick. I closed my chart. We'll put it on here. So see that? That's our shallow avalanche in play here. Trying to do the bigger downside move. Next support here is 123.6%. So it's basically that hybrid kind of half regular avalanche, half more on the shallow side because slower overall pullback than the upside. But that's helping create this added weakness still here, which you can really see on the 15-minute chart. So for pure, true shallow avalanche, this would have been looking more like this. So that's what it would have looked like. Instead, it did kind of a symmetrical wedge down here, triangle. But doing what we were expecting. Let's see, what else would you guys like me to pull up here and take a look at for you? Netflix is still looking lower. It's trying to do the same thing the Eurodollar is doing. It's breaking that lower support. So next support zone is down in here. It's breaking that channel. That shift in the momentum right there. How we just looked at Roku. Netflix. So this is basically looking like it's going to go into a triangle. Look at that previous low there is going to be that support zone. We should get some sort of reaction off of that zone, but I don't know how well it's going to hold it. Netflix is really kind of trying to struggle with what it's going to do now that it has so much competition. You're not allowed bathroom breaks, don't you know that? I'll show you Roku really fast again, but we're basically at measured move on the intraday chart. So here's rapid review. Support at the previous high that we were looking at, right, goes along with our class this week in League of Traders, where we've been focusing on those levels for support, and we're still looking for this to pull into 100% because we've got that measured move here, but the momentum is really strong, so we should widen up, and there's your really rapid review. All right, let's see. Too much coffee. I haven't had any coffee. Oh, you've had too much coffee. Let's see, what else do you guys want to say? I don't know how I made it through everything so fast. It's only 12:40. JNUG. Kinetic gold miners. So here's head and shoulders. We're right about 68.2% retracement. I need to put my menu back on the side of my charts. Check that out, or 61.8%, sorry. Did I say 68.2? I don't know why I said that. 61.8. I think I've been saying that all day. How weird. Anyways, 61.8. This is how well I've drawn Fibonacci's for so long, though, that I know where the levels are going to be. So you'll get used to them as well. I have them really light on here. Here's 76.4, 100%. So you're right at the support here. Really strong momentum into that. This could easily still pull into that further on the daily. Let me go to the weekly. I have that on there. Weird. Yeah, I'm doing better than last week, but still fighting this weird head stuff going on. Residual CSF leak fun stuff. So here's that support. Really strong momentum. So basically we've got our wedge here. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, megaphone rather. And that's the buy with the megaphone. And then you're right up at the resistance from the megaphone. So this is more likely to try to shift and break from this pattern now. Probably get slower move. But I still think we've got more downside on this. Just it came into this so hard and so fast. I think it's still going to try to pull lower. What is CSF? Oh my gosh, you are new. So 5 years ago, I had a cerebrospinal fluid leak, and it is basically all that fluid protects your brain and your spinal system. I had a 1.4 centimeter hole in my back. And so I'm just really sensitive to pressure changes now. And all of those flights on the way back from Europe last month kind of whacked me a little bit. So body is trying to readjust again. So that's the short version. Crazy things. Not fun. CAG is coming off of a 2T, coming back up to retest that. Weekly is kind of iffy. Let's look at where's the monthly at. So monthly is that widening up zone. So that can still pull back in here more. Just the momentum is so strong. Even this whole two-wave move is stronger than this on the downside. So even though it's trying to look like it has a phoenix, it can still easily pull back down again. It could do a shallow phoenix, not a shallow phoenix, but slower follow through on the phoenix and then pull back down too. Let me show you the weekly here. So see how the weekly got started really fast? Rapid move here. So it could go like this and kind of do like a 2T and end up breaking down again. That's the main risk that we have on this one as far as the bulls go. So even though it's trying to do what looks like a phoenix, because this had such a steep move here, and that stronger momentum on the other side of it, there's that risk that it could do a trap and break down. So I would be more cautious on this on the upside. Just use your advanced trade management and tighten up your stops more quickly. So like, for example, you want that channel to hold. So instead of just using purely under previous lows, if you're looking on the buy side, you want that channel to hold. You can even add Fibonacci fans onto there. And this time we're not right at the 76.4, but basically you want it to keep hugging that and to not let go of it on the downside. Let's see, anything else? You guys have any other questions? T, AT&T. Well, that's gaining momentum. So you've got, remember how I mentioned earlier, you can get these slower starts, gain momentum. So this can actually still go up looking at just the weekly chart. Let's look at the other stuff. Monthlies still has room too. So see the overall momentum here. Here's your overall downside momentum. Here's how it's starting on the upside, but it's gaining momentum. That makes this easier to even go up into a mega bone. So it's even easier for that to be able to make it back up to there. So if I was long AT&T, I would still generally be holding most of my position. Yes, we have short-term resistance, but longer-term potential is still looking pretty good. So short-term resistance, you've obviously got the previous highs back in here. That's what we're looking at. And kind of, I know those of you that are in like League of Traders, you'll kind of be familiar with this pattern where it goes from a phoenix to a 1, 2, 3. So we kind of have that going on in here. Shoulder, head, shoulder. It's messy, but that's what we've got going on. So basically what I would be looking for is for this to go into a longer kneecap and then do another move up there. So probably, you know, range here next week and then looking for that to go up. Do I invest in any dividend stocks as part of my portfolio? And which ones do I prefer? I used to, but I haven't so much recently. That is something I should probably start looking into again. I pulled out a lot of stuff when I had my CSF league. Yes, AT&T is a good one, correct. Hospitals and airplanes are expensive when you're doing air medical transport. Yeah. Let me pose the question, what are your guys' favorite dividend stocks recently? Any others? Verizon, yep. Show you guys Verizon here. And this looks pretty nice too, even just as a basic investment too, because you've got kind of that shallower move going on for this rounding off at the lows. So even just as, you know, typical investment, it's still looking pretty good too. That's actually some homework for me to do here this month. Go take a look at some of the other dividend stocks again. Yeah, GE got scrunched. It's that momentum. See how that has that strong two-wave measured move down, comes up, tries to do a shallow phoenix, can't manage it, doesn't base out long enough, crashes, and then shallower again. And this just does not look good here. Boeing. Boeing is, pretty extended here on the monthly. I do worry that Boeing is going to start to have the potential for some really rapid flushes on the downside. Overall, there's not anything to give me a short at this point, but because of the extension on the larger time frames, that does concern me. There's nothing like, really solid for a reversal yet. Could be many years before we see a good correction in it still. Chevron price chart here. This is a good example. See how that comes back up to that previous high? A perfect retest. Shift in momentum here. So that makes this, choppier. Needs to kind of basically base out longer. This could easily pull back into 100 over the next couple of years. And then try to go again. Do you think speculators are going to get caught when they do not get the max back in service soon? Well, the resistance that we're at right now is definitely that potential, yeah, on Boeing. But it's, like I said, it is tricky up here. So let me go back to the daily on this. So we have that steep correction and then the shallower pullback into the lower end here. This is basically a momentum reversal over here. So this is your momentum reversal plus, but it's a really steep momentum reversal plus. So typically for that to like fully lead to a drop, what we would have seen more of is that something like that, just a little bit of that, more of that correction in here and a little bit slower overall momentum, that would have tends to have like a bigger, more lasting reversal. So this can still, try to go into some sort of shallow avalanche, but I think it's a little ways off here. It's really iffy at this point. I wouldn't do much with Boeing right now. You can maybe get a couple of like short-term trades on like a 240-minute time frame, but I wouldn't be too speculative on this at this moment. All right, guys, we got time for a couple more. If you have a couple of other things you want me to take a look at, I can pull them up. Peso. Peso is just mid-range here. So, I mean, just like when Boeing pulled back in, it can do that chop and still pull back into this end here. But I would expect it to get choppier at this point because it hit it so fast. So I would look for a slowdown and then kind of pull back in. Let's see, here's the, whoops, 15-minute, 60-minute. Yeah, it's not giving any clear setups here. So kind of looking at the potential for this to be a tilted continuation on the downside. That looks like the most likely scenario at this moment. The Aussie Kiwi Nz. Oops, wrong way. Two T-ish action. So got that higher high, nice measured move here. Coming in, this is a good one that you can get that third wave because of the way that movement is on the upside compared to the downside. So this is one that could easily go back up and do that extra little push on the 60-minute here. Let's look at the daily. Yeah, daily has that room too. So the daily resistance is going to be up here. So this can easily do some more pushing action on the upside here. Let's look at the monthly, has more room on the upside. You can see the nice two-wave leg down here and then the retest for that second chance entry on the 2B. So that definitely has more room too. So overall, I think you're still looking at that continuing to push up at this point. KHC. There's one I have not looked at in ages. It is right at its measured move here. So you've got the two wave, and then the two wave, and this is a widening up zone. So I think this can still push lower, but it's going to get choppier now. We're going to start to see those bigger swings again. So this will be something, this is a monthly chart, so this is going to be something on the daily time frame. You can start to get, well, we're already starting to see it on the daily. You'll start to get more of the swings for swing trader type of positions at this level with the back and forth type of movement. It definitely still has room to, push lower, but doing more with the back and forth. It doesn't necessarily have to go lower. When you get a widening up zone, it could also widen up just by slowly, going up like that. You're kind of seeing a little bit of that ballet toe point going on here with the leg. So it can widen up like this. It can do that retest, do a two-wave, retest, and then bounce. But you'll be looking more for back and forth in here. All right, gang. So that is it for me here today. I'm going to wrap this up and get it posted for you so you can go back and review. And for those of us that tuned in Aussie land, I don't know if you are still awake or not, but I hope that helped you out with looking at the measured moves. So we basically had a lot of focus on that here today. So now go practice. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back here on Monday for League of Traders and Friday for those of you just tuning in for Forward Focus.